Welcome to Everyday Elevations. I'm your host, Jason Fricka, and I'll be taking you on a journey towards holistic health, discovering the power of transformation through expert interviews, in-depth research, actionable advice, and personal growth stories. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of Everyday Elevations. I'm your host, Jason Fricka, and today we're going to deep dive into the world of holistic health. We're going to discover Dr. Peggy Swarbrick's 8 dimensions of wellness, how those dimensions can positively impact your well-being, as well as I'm going to share my own personal journey and motivation behind creating this podcast itself. So with that, there are 8 dimensions of well-being. The first dimension is going to be mental or emotional wellness. The next dimension will be physical wellness. The third dimension will be social wellness. The fourth dimension will be environmental wellness. The fifth dimension will be financial wellness. The sixth dimension will be intellectual wellness. The seventh dimension will be occupational or vocational wellness. And the eighth and final dimension will be spiritual wellness. With that, let's dive into emotional wellness a little bit more. Emotional wellness, it's your ability to heal or even integrate or deal with past trauma and how you cope with everyday life stressors and how you experience and express your emotions. You want to express those in a healthy and productive way. And that requires you to have an awareness of your thoughts and feelings. It's going to allow you to become a more emotionally sound individual. And that's really what that dimension is about. It's about creating this emotional wellness and overall well-being for you internally. The next one's going to be your physical wellness. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is going to measure how well you manage your health, whether it's nutrition, your sleep patterns, things like that. So you really have to think of it as, what is your relationship to food and nutrition? Are you a late night snacker? Do you mindlessly snack when you're watching TV, or maybe if you're playing a video game? Do you eat when you're sad? Are you the person like me where I used to just sit there and grab a pint of ice cream, as cliche as it is, and I wouldn't eat the whole pint, but I'd go in when I'm sad and I go have a little ice cream, might even have a shot or two. Who knows? It just depended on how I want to cope with things. I didn't always have a healthy relationship with it. And that's what you have to understand, is what is your relationship with food and nutrition? Now, another aspect of this is exercise and fitness. How do you feel about your current state of fitness? Like, do you feel good about where you're at? Are you unhappy with some aspect of it? What can you do to better that? What are some principles that you follow? What does success when it comes to exercise and fitness look like to you? What don't you like to do? What do you like to do? These are all things that you have to add in. This way you can make sure that you're choosing the right impactful exercises for yourself. Because if you're just trying to do something for somebody else, it's not going to work typically. You want to make sure that you're doing exercises that will excite you and will keep you going. You want to build that proper habit. Now, there's also sleep. Sleep is probably one of the most critical aspects of this dimension. You really need to understand how much sleep you're getting on an average night. You want to make sure that you're getting full sleep. Are you waking up often throughout the night? What are you doing before you go to bed that's causing that? When you wake up, do you feel well rested? If not, could it be something that you did the day prior? Are you not getting proper sleep? There's a lot of habits and routines that you can modify to make sure that you're getting better sleep habits. And throughout this podcast, we're going to go into all of these categories and discuss further. For the third dimension of wellness, we're going to deep dive into social wellness. And this really is just a measure of our relationships with people. It means that you have some healthy, deep and meaningful relationships, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with friends, family, community. I like to call this your tribe. Do you have a tribe? Do you have that support system that's going to be there for you? These are things that you need to understand. And if you don't, how do you get there? What do these people look like to you? What qualities do you want them to have? What's a deal breaker for you? Like, what is a no-go? If you will not deal with this person if they're going to have this type of quality. What are you willing to sacrifice in this relationship? Whether it's with a friend, partner, family, your tribe, either way, there's always a give and a take with it. So you want to keep that in mind. These are things that you want to understand. For the fourth dimension, it's going to be environmental wellness. More about, do we feel like we're in a supportive environment? Whether that's at home or work or where you spend time outside. For me personally, I love living where I live because I have access to mountains. Like I live in Colorado and I chose to move here from Illinois because I enjoyed the outdoors. I want to make sure that I was in a place that there's going to be more emotionally healthy, environmentally healthy for myself. Now you have to keep in mind, some environmental wellness could be like you want to buy a house, right? Well, where do you want to live? Where do you currently live? How do you get to where you want to get to? What do you consider to be your standard of living? What's healthy? What's that going to cost you to get there? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to get to that area? Are you living with anybody? Like, are you looking to have a partner? Do you like being alone, dealing with everything on your own? Like, these are all things you got to add in. There's also the work aspect. For me, work culture is huge. So when I look at joining a company, I look at how they treat their employees. What type of values do they have? And are the people there portraying those values? That's what makes, for me, a healthy work environment. So these are things you got to look at. Is it in the office? Are you allowed to work from home? Do you have flexibility? In today's society, most people want that flexibility from home. Maybe you have a newborn child that you need to spend more time with, and it's a lot harder for you to be able to get to work. Is that a priority for you? Well, that's something that you got to add in and see, hey, what works best for me for environmental wellness? And of course, there's the social environmental aspect, which is just the people you spend with. They're in your circle. Are they building you up? Are they breaking you down? Who's in your circle? Who do you want to be in your circle? Whose circle do you want to be in? These are all things that create a healthy environment. Outside of your friends and family, which is your standard social circle, who else is your tribe? Are you in a tribe that's online? Are they local? How do you interact with them? Like, these are things that you really want to take into account. Then, of course, I mentioned this already, but being in Colorado, I love my relationship to nature. It's a huge thing for me because that's how I get a lot of my stress relief. Whenever I'm having something going on in my head, I like to walk around nature to deal with that. So what is your relationship to nature? Is going on a hike in the mountains something important to you, or just a beautiful area where there's like a nice creek that's calming and relaxes you? What do you need? What are your activities that you enjoy doing outside? These are all things that you have to think about. The next dimension is going to be your financial wellness. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is our relationship with finance and money and how it supports our other dimensions of wellness. So what is your relationship to money itself? Like, do you have a savings account? Do you have proper income? Can you survive in your current living environment? Do you have debt? What type of savings do you do? What type of investing do you do? All this is a huge aspect of your emotional and physical wellness because it impacts it all. It's hard for you to not be stress-free if you're sitting there in $200,000 in debt and you're not making ends meet. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's very hard for you to deal with your stressors in a healthy, productive way. So it's super important to understand that. And understand, what does a healthy income look like for you? Maybe you're not there right now, but what would your dream income look like that can get you to those places in your life? What about your partner if you have one, or if you're interested in one? What are you looking to do to make it an even partnership, or do you even care about that? And then keep in mind that in order to make money, you tend to lose some time. So how do you figure out the amount of time that you're willing to put in that isn't too much of a sacrifice for making that money? Because time is the one commodity you can never get back in life. So keep that in mind as you're trying to figure out your income and what you want to do. Yes, in America, we like to push the work extra hard, put in late hours agenda. That if you do this, then you have a better chance of being successful. That's not always entirely true. If you can find a way to be more efficient with your time, you can make more money in less amount of time and have more time for other areas of your dimensions of wellness. So just keep that in mind when you're setting your goals for that. And of course, with income there comes expenses. Do you have a budget plan? Do you really pay attention to it? Do you write down your budgets? Do you put in Excel spreadsheets? Things like that. What does it cost for you to survive right now, to cover your bills, to make sure that you can still feed your family or yourself? What percentage of your income goes to what? Like, these are things that you need to understand. If you're going to invest money, how much can you actually afford? When it comes to investments, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. So you got to keep that in mind. And then debt. We all understand what debt is. It's just, how does it make you feel? When it comes to debt, where are you okay with it? Where aren't you? How do you justify taking on debt? And how are you going to pay for debt if you do take on debt? So keep in mind, any loan you take is really considered debt. So if you're getting student loans, that's debt. So you got to keep that in mind. If you're taking a loan out for a car, that's debt, because there's going to be a percentage, an APR, that's going to add more money to that loan. They're not just giving you money for free. They're trying to make money off of that. So regardless, you need to understand, what can you truly afford? Is it logical for the debt? And then, of course, I mentioned savings and investments. This is pretty self-explanatory. Like, are you saving money? If not, how can you set aside money from each paycheck to save a little bit? What's an amount that you feel you can afford to put into an account for that? Do you have an emergency fund? Like, these are things that you got to think about. Life happens. You never know when life's going to kick you in the butt. So do you have money in case you lose your job? Do you have enough money to cover a certain amount of months? Like, these are things you have to add in. And then, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur in life. So maybe you really love your job and you make great money. Odds are then you're planning on retiring with that company, correct? Do you have a plan for that retirement? Like, when are you shooting for it? Do you know what your cost of living will be when you do retire? What's the difference in the money that you're getting now versus then? What do you see your life looking like when you're retiring? These are all factors you got to add in. And that really sums up the financial wellness dimension as best as I possibly can. The next dimension is going to be intellectual wellness. And this really is, how healthy is your mind? Like, do you educate yourself on a regular basis? Are you supportive in your mentality? Are you considered a lifelong learner? Are you a creative type? Do you have healthy relationships with new thoughts and ideas? And this comes into a couple different subcategories here. So if you look at education, you want to understand, if you're, and again, not everyone's going to be entrepreneurs. So I'm going to base this off of the not being an entrepreneur for this portion right here. If you're getting into law school, what type of education do you need to be competitive in your career? Let's say if you want to be an accountant, what type of education do you need? Are you achieving your potential intellectually speaking? These are some of the things that education you got to look at. Again, it's a lifelong process of learning. If you want to be successful, understand that learning is lifelong. And with that, as you're learning more and more, you can pass on knowledge. Like, what would you want to leave knowledge-wise for your kids, your friends, your family? Of course, there's things like mindset philosophy. Like, what do you feel would be your philosophy for life? Like, what do you consider a successful life? What type of mindset makes you feel supported in not just your life, but also work? How do you handle thoughts when things get difficult? What type of thoughts run through your brain? How do you cope with negative thoughts? Things like that. These are all ideas that you have to really delve into. And we will throughout our podcast. We're going to do more and more delving into these concepts. Again, you really have to understand that relationship to your mind. If you're afraid to be alone with your thoughts, that means your mindset isn't in the right place. It's not that you have to be alone all the time, but it's healthy to be able to be alone with your thoughts. Sometimes you need some alone time so that you can really delve into some things that you've been struggling with. What thoughts are holding you back? What thoughts are making you move forward? Are you even happy with your mindset? What would a great mindset look like to you? How do you get there? Again, I'm going to go into more of these throughout more episodes. There's a whole lot to delve into. This is just the broad overview of each dimension. The next one's going to be occupational or vocational wellness. And this just comes down to, do you love what you do? Does your career take over your whole life? Do you have time for hobbies and fun aspects of life, going on adventures? How much of your time is focused on just making money? I think in American society, we are really focused on money, 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 money. And things are starting to shift a lot more in the past couple of years, where people are focused on the time they have versus the money they're making. So there's a trade-off. If you want to make enough money to live your best life, sometimes you might have to sacrifice some time, but you don't want to be sacrificing so much time that you're missing out on relationships. You're breaking relationships. Now, also understand that when it comes to making money, is the money you're making enough? Are you going to be able to cover your living expenses? Are you living paycheck to paycheck, or are you living comfortably? Are these things meeting your financial goals? If not, what would make you comfortable? What's that hidden pay amount that would make you feel great about where you're at? Maybe you have a hobby or passion project. Like for me, this podcast is now, I don't want to say passion project because this is more of a mission for me, but let's call this a passion project. What would this pay? For me, I don't care what it pays. This is about me learning more aspects of holistic wellness. What's that look like? Would you take a pay cut? Let's say that you have to start off, you have to commit so much time that you have to maybe cut back on your hours at work or even potentially quit that job. Are you willing to do what you truly love? Are you willing to make that sacrifice? What would you be willing to sacrifice? And then, of course, let's talk career progression. If you have a job, is it something that you're not really passionate about? Is it just to pay the bills and get you a little extra for some fun? Or is this a career that you're excited for? This is your niche. This is what you want to do. This is how you see yourself giving back to the world. Are you happy with it? If not, what does happiness in a career look like for you? Do you have a plan? How are you going to execute that plan? If not, figure it out. Maybe a career isn't as important to you. It does affect other dimensions of wellness. So if you're not making enough money, you're going to be stressed out. You might not feel emotionally adequate. It's going to affect other aspects. If you get depressed because you're not making enough money, that's going to affect how willing you are to work out. Now, counter that is exercise can help you with depression, so it kind of could potentially balance itself out. But no, there will be struggles there. And maybe that affects some of your social wellness too, because you're not very confident in yourself because you're not making that amount of money that you feel like you should be. The last aspect of this will be hobbies and recreation. What do you like to do outside of your day-to-day life? Like most people work 9 to 5. So what are things that help calm you down? What gets you to get into a healthy place outside of work? What makes you happy? What gets you excited to wake up? When you do something, what makes you feel great about it? Like what do you feel refreshed after early morning exercise? Things like that. These are all things that you have to add in. And that's what's going to make you more whole and healthy in the occupational wellness aspect. Because people commonly just assume that work is that occupational or vocational wellness category, but there's so much more to it. It's what you do outside of work that carries into that. Yes, we are very work-centric here in America, but you need to figure out how you create another balance. How do you become a happier person? What gets you to leave work at work? What are things that get you there? Now, the final dimension of wellness would be spiritual wellness, understanding the meaning of life and what that means to you. So this is going to require you to really deep dive into your own being, knowing what your values are and what you want to contribute to this world. Do you want to leave something? Do you want to leave a legacy? A lot of people associate spiritual with religion. But spiritual doesn't always have to have a relationship with God. You want to make sure that you are living in alignment with yourself. So what does that mean? Like knowledge of self. You're going to have to figure out who you are. Are you your job? A lot of people, when they introduce themselves, like, hey, I'm Steve, yada, yada, yada. I'm a marketing expert with ABC company. They use their work as their identity. But what is your true identity? Who are you? What is your purpose in life? Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, leave us a review, and don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind the scenes content.